Oliver Grant gazed out of his living room window, his calloused fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee. The quiet suburban street stretched before him, predictable as ever. At 50, his routine felt less like stability and more like stagnation. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, a constant reminder of time slipping away. With a sigh, Oliver set down his cup and reached for his worn gardening gloves. At least the roses needed tending. Outside, the summer sun beat down on his thinning hair as he knelt in the dirt. He had just begun pruning when a moving truck rumbled onto the street, coming to a stop at the house next door. Curious, Oliver peered over the fence. "New neighbors," he muttered. It had been years since anyone new had arrived on Willow Lane. As he watched, movers began unloading peculiar furniture and strange, pulsating orbs. His brow furrowed. Then, a figure stepped out of the truck, and Oliver's breath caught. She was tall, easily over 6 feet, with limbs that moved with an elegance almost too fluid to be human. But it was her skin that truly stunned him. It shimmered with an iridescent glow, as if lit from within. As she turned, Oliver caught sight of her eyes, deep violet and hypnotic, seeming to see right through him. He ducked behind the fence, his pulse racing. An alien, an actual extraterrestrial, had moved in next door. "Oliver, you all right over there?" He nearly jumped at the voice. His elderly neighbor, Mrs. Whitmore, stood on her porch, concern on her face. "Fine, just fine," Oliver called back, his voice unsteady. "Did you see?" Mrs. Whitmore nodded, eyes wide. "Never seen anything like it. Should we call someone?" Before Oliver could answer, a melodic voice floated over the fence. "Hello, neighbors. I am Nyla. I hope my arrival isn't disturbing anyone." Slowly, Oliver stood, coming face to face with his otherworldly neighbor. Up close, her beauty was even more mesmerizing. Her skin pulsed softly, casting a faint glow around her. Hello," Oliver stammered. "I'm Oliver. Welcome to the neighborhood." Nyla's violet eyes crinkled as she smiled. "Thank you, Oliver. I look forward to getting to know you better." There was something in her tone, a subtle suggestion, perhaps, that sent heat rising to Oliver's cheeks. He cleared his throat. "Where exactly are you from, if you don't mind me asking?" "Oh, a place you've likely never heard of," Nyla said with an easy smile. "Zifara, it's quite far from here." She spoke as though she were discussing a move from another city rather than another solar system. Mrs. Whitmore, now closer, gaped at Nyla. "Good Lord," she murmured. "I never thought I'd see the day." Nyla turned her dazzling smile to the older woman. "And you are?" "Margaret Whitmore," the elderly woman said faintly, thrusting out a dish Oliver hadn't noticed before. I baked you a welcome pie." "How thoughtful," Nyla exclaimed, reaching for the pie. As she did, her fingers lightly brushed Oliver's arm. A jolt of energy raced through him, making him gasp. Nyla's eyes locked onto his, a knowing look passing between them. "I do hope we'll become good friends, Oliver," she purred. Oliver swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. This was definitely not how he expected his day to go. As the days passed, Oliver found himself increasingly distracted by his new neighbor. He'd catch glimpses of Nyla through his window, moving gracefully about her yard, lounging on her porch. More than once, he looked up to find her watching him, those violet eyes unreadable yet captivating. Their interactions started small, a polite wave over the fence, a casual greeting while collecting the mail. But soon, Nyla sought Oliver out more often. One afternoon, as he watered his garden, she appeared at the fence. "Your flowers are lovely," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "On Zifara, we have plants that sing when they bloom. Perhaps I could show you sometime." Oliver nearly dropped the hose. "That sounds incredible," he managed. Nyla's smile widened. "Excellent. It's a date, then." Before he could process her words, she was gone, leaving him flustered and undeniably intrigued. The next day, as he trimmed his hedges, a commotion from Nyla's yard caught his attention. Peering over the fence, he saw her struggling with what appeared to be a large, pulsating plant. "Need a hand?" he called out before he could stop himself. Nyla looked up, relief evident on her face. "Oh, Oliver. Yes, please. This Lumavine is being particularly stubborn." Oliver stepped into her yard, eyes widening at the array of alien flora surrounding him. The plant she was wrestling with glowed faintly, its leaves shimmering in an iridescent hue. "What exactly do you need me to do?" he asked cautiously. "If you could just hold it steady while I replant it, that would be wonderful." He nodded and gripped the plant's trunk. At once, warmth tingled through his fingers, spreading up his arms. He gasped, nearly letting go. "Oh, don't mind that," Nyla said with a light laugh. "It's just saying hello." Oliver watched in awe as she deftly repositioned the plant, her movements fluid, almost hypnotic. He found himself captivated by the way light danced across her skin. "There we go," Nyla said triumphantly. She turned to Oliver, her violet eyes gleaming. "Thank you for your help. I don't know what I'd do without such a kind neighbor." She stepped closer, and Oliver caught a hint of an intoxicating, unfamiliar scent. His head swam. "It was my pleasure," he said, his voice lower than he intended. Nyla's gaze lingered on his. "Perhaps you'd like to stay for a drink. I have a beverage from my world. I think you'd enjoy it." Oliver knew he should decline. This whole situation was bizarre, potentially dangerous. But something about Nyla pulled him in, made him want to know more. "I'd love to," he heard himself say. Nyla's smile was radiant. "Wonderful. Come inside." As Oliver stepped into her home, he had the distinct feeling he was crossing into something far beyond his understanding. The interior was a surreal blend of earthly furnishings and alien technology. Orbs of light floated near the ceiling, casting a soft glow. "Make yourself comfortable," Nyla said, motioning to an oddly shaped couch. As he sat, it shifted beneath him, molding to his form. "So, Nyla," Oliver began, aiming for casual. "What brings you to Earth? To this neighborhood specifically?" Nyla turned, a knowing glint in her eye. "Curiosity, mainly. Your planet fascinates me. And as for this neighborhood," her gaze locked onto his, "let's just say I had a feeling I'd find something interesting here." Oliver's mouth went dry. Before he could respond, Nyla handed him a glass filled with a shimmering, opalescent liquid. "A special brew from Zifara," she said. "I think you'll find it quite stimulating." Oliver took a cautious sip. The liquid tingled on his tongue, spreading warmth through his body. Suddenly, the room felt much warmer. "This is remarkable," he murmured. Nyla beamed. "I'm so glad you like it. You know, Oliver, I've been meaning to ask you something." She leaned in, her scent enveloping him. His heart pounded. "Yes?" he managed. "I was wondering if you'd show me around town sometime. Everything here is so new. I'd love to explore it with someone who knows their way around." The request seemed innocent, but there was an undercurrent to her words he couldn't quite place. He nodded before fully processing it. "Great," Nyla said, clapping her hands. "It's a date, then." Oliver's head spun. Was he imagining this? Surely an alien wouldn't be interested in him? Would she? Before he could dwell on it, a crash from outside shattered the moment. They turned toward the window, just in time to see Nyla's garden coming alive. The touch sent a surge of energy through Oliver's body, and he felt Nyla shiver against him. "This is unacceptable," Mrs. Whitmore exclaimed. "I'm calling the authorities." "Wait," Oliver said, surprising himself with the urgency in his voice. He turned to Nyla. "Can you stop this? Control it?" Nyla bit her lip, a gesture that was becoming frustratingly endearing. I don't know. This has never happened before, but I can try. She closed her eyes, her expression tightening in deep concentration. The air around them vibrated, and Oliver felt a strange, tingling sensation across his skin. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the writhing plants began to retreat. Mrs. Whitmore gasped, "It's working!" As the alien flora receded, Oliver noticed something remarkable. The soil where Nyla's plants had been was now bursting with life. Flowers of every imaginable color bloomed at an accelerated rate, filling the air with a heady, intoxicating fragrance. "Incredible," Oliver murmured, unable to tear his eyes away from the transformation. Nyla opened her eyes, looking both relieved and exhausted. That should stabilize things, for now. Mrs. Whitmore, seemingly forgetting her earlier panic, shuffled forward to inspect the new blossoms. "I've never seen anything like this. They're beautiful." Oliver turned to Nyla, his curiosity overriding his caution. "What exactly is happening here?" She met his gaze, emotions flickering across her luminous features. "It's complicated, Oliver. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." The way she said his name sent a shiver down his spine. He nodded, suddenly eager to be alone with her again. "Mrs. Whitmore," Oliver said, turning to his elderly neighbor, "why don't you head inside? I promise we'll sort this out." The older woman, still dazed by the floral display, nodded and shuffled back toward her house. As she disappeared, Oliver felt Nyla's hand slip into his. "Your place or mine?" she asked, a teasing glint in her violet eyes. Oliver swallowed hard. "Mine, if that's okay." Nyla smiled, and his heart skipped a beat. "Lead the way, Oliver Grant." As they stepped into his house, Oliver was suddenly aware of how ordinary it must seem compared to Nyla's otherworldly home. But if she noticed, she didn't show it. Instead, her eyes roamed the space with genuine curiosity. "So," Oliver said, trying to sound casual as he led her to the living room, "want to tell me what's really going on?" Nyla sank onto the couch, her glowing skin casting a soft radiance around her. "It's not easy to explain," she admitted. "My people, we experience things differently than humans do." Oliver sat beside her, careful to keep some distance. "Different how?" Nyla met his gaze, and something surged between them. "We have cycles, Oliver. Periods of intense need." Oliver's mouth went dry. "Need?" She nodded, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "On my world, we call it the joining. It's a time when we seek out a compatible partner. The urge becomes overwhelming." Realization dawned on Oliver. "And you're experiencing this now?" Nyla looked down at her hands. "Yes, it's why I came to Earth. I thought a change of scenery might help me control it." Oliver's mind reeled. "The plants, the lights, they're connected to this, aren't they?" Nyla laughed softly. "Everything on Zephyra is connected, Oliver. Our emotions, our physical states, they affect the world around us, and here on Earth, that connection is even stronger." As if to emphasize her point, the lamp beside them flickered, then brightened, casting Nyla in an almost ethereal glow. Oliver leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. "So, every time you feel something, it affects your surroundings?" She nodded, her violet eyes locked onto his. "Yes, and lately, Oliver, I've been feeling quite a lot." The air between them seemed charged. Oliver found himself leaning in, drawn by a force he couldn't explain. "Nyla," he whispered, "what exactly are you feeling right now?" She reached out, her fingers grazing his cheek. A jolt of energy raced through him. "Why don't I show you?" Before Oliver could react, Nyla leaned in and kissed him. The world around him exploded in a riot of sensation. He felt as if he were both falling and flying, every nerve ending in his body singing with pleasure. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Oliver noticed every plant in his house had burst into full bloom. The air was thick with a heady, otherworldly scent, and the walls seemed to glow with a soft pink light. "Wow," Oliver breathed, struggling to form coherent thoughts. "That," Nyla murmured, "was just the beginning." In the days that followed, Oliver found himself swept up in a whirlwind of emotion and chaos. Nyla was like a force of nature, unpredictable, exhilarating. She would appear at his door at all hours, sometimes bringing strange alien delicacies, other times simply wanting to sit with him, to bask in his presence. One evening, as they lay in Oliver's backyard staring up at the stars, Nyla suddenly sat up, her skin pulsing with a brilliant glow. "Oliver," she said, her voice trembling with excitement, "I want to teach you something, a word from my language." Oliver raised an eyebrow. "Okay, I'm listening." Nyla leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "Gianna," she whispered. As the alien syllables left her lips, Oliver felt a rush of warmth wash over him. The grass beneath them swayed despite the still air, and tiny glowing particles shimmered around them. What does it mean?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Nyla's eyes held his, their violet depths endless. "It means my heart's desire." Oliver's pulse quickened. "Nyla, Before he could finish, a sudden crash from next door made them both jump. Rushing to the fence, they found Mrs. Whitmore's cat, Mr. Puddles, glowing neon blue and floating 3 feet off the ground. "Oh dear," Nyla murmured. "It seems my emotions are affecting more than just plant life now." As they worked to calm the terrified feline, Oliver couldn't help but wonder, what other surprises did Nyla's presence bring? And more importantly, was he ready for them? The following week brought more strange occurrences. Streetlights flickered and danced whenever Nyla walked by. The weather itself seemed to shift, bringing bursts of unseasonable warmth and streaks of vibrant colors in the night sky. Oliver felt torn. On one hand, Nyla had awakened something in him, a sense of wonder, of adventure. But on the other, they were toying with forces neither of them fully understood. One afternoon, as he struggled to tame his now wildly overgrown garden, he heard another commotion from Nyla's yard. Peering over the fence, he found her surrounded by floating orbs of water. "Nyla!" he called, concern creeping into his voice. "Everything okay?" She turned to him, excitement and uncertainty flickering across her face. "Oh, Oliver, I was just practicing." "Practicing what?" She gestured, and the orbs began to swirl in intricate patterns. "On Zephyra, we use our emotions to manipulate the elements, but Earth's physics seem to work a bit differently." As if to prove her point, one of the orbs suddenly burst, drenching them both. Oliver laughed. "Maybe stick to Earth physics for now." Nyla joined his laughter, but as the moment faded, her expression grew serious. "Oliver," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you about the joining." His heart pounded. "What about it?" Her skin pulsed with light. "It's progressing faster than I expected. I don't have much time left to choose a partner." Oliver's breath caught. "Choose a partner?" She nodded. "Yes, Oliver, and I want it to be you." And just like that, Oliver knew. His life would never be the same. Yet somehow, that thought didn't scare him as much as it should have. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over his now overgrown garden, Oliver sat on his porch, his mind racing with thoughts. Nyla's words echoed in his head, the intricacies of Zephyran bonding, both mesmerizing and overwhelming. Running a hand through his graying hair, he felt the weight of the decision before him. The idea of bonding with an alien, of altering the very fabric of his existence, sent a shiver down his spine. But the thought of losing Nyla, of returning to his mundane, predictable life, felt like an even greater loss. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. When he opened it, Nyla stood there, her luminous skin pulsing faintly, betraying her nervousness. "May I come in?" she asked, her violet eyes searching his. Oliver nodded, stepping aside. As she entered, the air around them seemed to hum with energy. The houseplants in the entryway stretched toward her, their leaves quivering with what Oliver could only describe as excitement. They settled on the couch, a small but noticeable space between them. Still, Oliver felt her presence like a force, drawing him in. "Have you decided?" Nyla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliver exhaled slowly. "Nyla, I'm scared," he admitted. "This is all so much, so fast. A month ago, my biggest worry was whether I should repaint the fence. And now—" He laughed shakily. "Now I'm contemplating a bond that could change the course of my entire life." Nyla's glow dimmed slightly. "I understand, Oliver. I never wanted to pressure you. If this is too much, perhaps I should—" "No," Oliver interrupted, surprising even himself with the intensity of his response. He reached out, taking her hand in his. A familiar warmth spread through him, tingling in his fingertips. "That's not what I'm saying," he continued. "Yes, I'm afraid, but I'm also exhilarated. You've brought something back into my life, Nyla. Color, wonder, purpose. I don't want to lose that." Her eyes widened, hope blooming across her face. "Oliver, are you saying—" He nodded, a slow smile forming. "I'm saying yes. Whatever this entails, whatever comes next, I want to face it with you." The words had barely left his lips when the room erupted with light. Nyla's skin shimmered like a supernova, and every plant in the house burst into bloom. The air filled with a scent so rich and intoxicating that Oliver felt breathless. With a joyous laugh, Nyla threw her arms around him, her touch sending waves of warmth through his body. "Oh, Oliver," she whispered, emotion thick in her voice. "You've made me so happy. I promise I'll do everything I can to make this transition as easy as possible." As the days passed, Oliver and Nyla fell into a rhythm, learning, adapting, discovering. Evenings stretched long as Nyla shared stories of Zephyra, and Oliver introduced her to Earth's peculiar customs. One night as they lounged on the couch watching Casablanca, Nyla suddenly frowned. "Oliver," she asked, tilting her head, "why don't the humans in these films glow when they feel strong emotions?" Oliver chuckled. "Because we don't glow at all. That's uniquely you." Her eyes widened. "Really? Then how do you express feelings?" He thought for a moment. "Words, mostly. Facial expressions, body language. Sometimes we blush. Sometimes we cry." Nyla leaned in, her gaze locked onto his. "Show me," she whispered. His heart pounded as he cupped her face in his hands. "Nyla," he murmured, "you are the most incredible being I have ever met. You make me feel alive in ways I never thought possible. I love you." Her luminescent skin flushed with a warm, rosy hue, her eyes glistening like stars. "Oh, Oliver," she whispered, "I love you too." As their lips met, a surge of energy rippled through the room. The lights flickered, the plants swayed, and Oliver felt as though he was floating. With every passing day, their connection deepened. Oliver found himself more attuned to Nyla, sensing her emotions even when she wasn't near. Colors became more vivid, sounds richer. At night, he swore he could hear the whispers of his garden. But with wonder came challenges. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors. Mrs. Whitmore had taken to wearing a tinfoil hat, insisting it protected her from alien mind control. And then the protests started. One afternoon, Oliver stepped outside to find a crowd gathered near his house, holding signs that read, "Humans only, and protect Earth from alien influence." His pulse quickened, anger flaring alongside worry for Nyla's safety. Before he could react, he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let me handle this." Nyla said softly. She stepped forward, radiating calm. As she approached the protesters, flowers bloomed at her feet, filling the air with a sweet, soothing fragrance. "Good afternoon," Nyla said, her melodic voice carrying over the crowd. "I understand you have concerns about my presence here. I'd like to address them." The crowd hesitated, their anger faltering in the wake of her presence. She spoke to them, not with fear, but with hope. She talked about peace, about understanding, about the knowledge her people could share. Slowly, the tension dissipated. By the time she finished speaking, some of the protesters had even lowered their signs. Oliver stood in awe. Weeks turned into months, and their bond only grew stronger. Nyla taught Oliver how to channel energy, starting small, making flowers bloom with a mere thought. Then, one evening, as they lay in the backyard, Nyla suddenly sat up, her glow intensifying. "Oliver," she said, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." Concern flickered through him. "What is it?" She took his hand, placing it gently over her abdomen. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. At first, there was nothing. Then, a faint rhythmic pulse, like a tiny spark of life. His eyes widened. "Nyla, are you—" She nodded, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "We're going to have a baby, Oliver. A perfect blend of our two worlds." The realization hit him like a wave. Joy, fear, excitement, and wonder crashed over him all at once. He pulled Nyla close, pressing a kiss to her forehead as the garden erupted into a dazzling display of bioluminescent blooms. In the months that followed, they prepared for a future unlike any they had imagined. The entire neighborhood, even Mrs. Whitmore, rallied around them. And when the day finally arrived, the sky above their home exploded in waves of shimmering color, a cosmic celebration of new life. Their daughter was born, glowing softly in Oliver's arms with his dark hair and Nyla's violet eyes. "What should we call her?" Nyla asked. He gazed at the sky, still pulsing with celestial light. "Aurora," he said. Nyla smiled. "Aurora, it's perfect." As they settled into their new life, watching their daughter grow, Oliver marveled at how much had changed. "Nyla," he mused one afternoon, "when you moved in next door, I never imagined this." She laughed, curling against him. "Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" He looked at his family, the glowing garden, the woman he loved, the child they'd created, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. "Yes," he whispered, "and I wouldn't change a thing."